I was doing my research, and Ryanair is just amazing. At carrying people as well as carrying the humor with it.
What they have managed to do, Shivam, is take a seemingly boring product as an airline. Sure, airlines can be fun, but we haven't seen anything like this from a carrier. And of course, people are like, "Oh, I fly by Ryanair, and it's not very nice," but they're embracing it. But like, oh yeah, you know what? That's what we can afford. Right?
They're
So
not apologetic. They're not apologetic at all.
Not at all.
I mean, imagine how freeing it must be to work in that marketing team. You're being absolutely honest. If you ask me, it's my dream job to work in the marketing team of Ryanair, right?
Very interesting creators as well, Shubham, that we have. There are not too many brands you associate with when it comes to being unhinged, authentic, bold, rude, self-aware. Bunch of these terms you'd use for the brand that we're speaking about on today's episode of Influencer Matchmaking. The brand is Ryanair. And Ryanair is a unique species. And why I'm calling them a species is because there are many who've tried to replicate it. But there are certain things about Ryanair inherently, their positioning, their stature, their comms, which makes them different, which allows them to do what they do. But we had a question. What if Ryanair were to collaborate with creators, probably from Europe, probably from America? So we thought this is an interesting experiment. If Ryanair were to do influencer marketing, who would they choose? And we've roughly come up with two names. One is, of course, Louis from the UK, right? You would have a lot of fun with him. He has a podcast. He does solo traveling. And we also have Nadine, who has a lot of travel hacks. But before we speak about Louis and Nadine and whether or not they're actually a good fit for Ryanair, let's introduce Shubham. Shubham, how's it going?
It's going great, man. It's going, let's say, unhinged because I was doing my research, and Ryanair is just amazing.
It is.
At carrying people as well as carrying the humor with it.
They are.
Where so
They're the carriers of not just humor, not just people, but also like humor, I guess, as you very correctly mentioned, because, they have what they have managed to do, Shivam, is take a seemingly boring product as an airline. Sure, airlines can be fun, but we haven't seen anything like this from a carrier. And of course, Ryanair being a low cost carrier, I think that really plays on to the fact that it can do so many things on social media where it's, people are like, oh, I fly Ryanair, and it's not very nice, but they're embracing it. But like, oh yeah, you know what? That's what we can afford. Right?
they're
So
not apologetic. They're not apologetic at all.
Not at all. They're not at all. They're like, this is what you get. This is what you paid for. Right. So I think that attitude, this irreverent attitude that Ryanair has really sort of, struck a very big chord with me. Right. I have to admit that it's been one of the biggest revelations that I've had. And I think I was reading an article with the head of social and creative on Sprout Social, right? And it's a great article. Definitely going to link that in the show notes of the description. And there, of course, he was mentioning, the strategy behind it. What do you think about that?
I mean, imagine how freeing it must be to work, in that marketing team.
Yeah,
You're being absolutely honest.
you are.
There is no pretensions, corporate pretensions. There is no, you're not being reverent, dear sir or madam. There are no words like that. There is no thank yous being exchanged with those who must like.
No thank yous, no fake smiles, as you correctly mentioned.
I mean, if you ask me, it's my dream job to work in the marketing team of Ryanair, right?
Sure.
So the strategy is very simple. They're keeping, they have sorted out their basics, of course.
Sure.
The same, podcast which you mentioned, they are saying like, of course, we do SEO and everything.
Yeah.
When you look for low cost career, will appear on that search page. But on top of that, the irreverent layer, I think that's what, puts them on top of your head.
Exactly. Top of the mind recall. Absolutely.
The recall is amazing.
Absolutely.
And I mean, so fun. Look at their, memes. They're using memes. I think memes came first and they realized that, we are being, memified because what we are. They embraced it. Like
they embraced it.
We are.
Exactly. And this is such a great point that you mentioned, Shubham, because embracing this is difficult. Because first of all, there are very few products which actually can become memes. That in itself is an achievement. And then sort of hugging that, be like, okay, you know what? Yes, this is us, right? We can do this. We can actually be this persona. I think that is data. It's very interesting because in that interview as well, he was mentioning how, it's not really a phenomenon just for the past 2 years. Ryanair has been a disruptor, right? Because when they
Yeah.
came in the European market, they were disrupting the national carriers of the 80s and of the long time. And they came with disruption built into that core, right? So even their social strategy is disruptive. And it's very, akin to TikTok. Of course, when the pandemic hit, then, we saw short form videos on a rise. The airline industry was decimated, but they were like, how do we make sure that we're still relevant, that people are still talking about us? And that's where the whole TikTok strategy came through. Of course, it was on Twitter as well, or X. So it's been there, it's pervasive. But Shubham, now we have to take on the interesting task, right? Now we've,
Yep.
laid down the bed that, okay, it's a very interesting
Matchmaking.
brand. They're a very honest brand, but now we have to do some matchmaking.
Yeah.
But you told me something very interesting in the pre-chat, Shubham, which I want to bring up right now because I sort of resonate with it, but also I want to hear more from you. What is your take on Ryanair's influencer marketing?
So, I mean, in this show, we do matchmaking between
Yeah,
brands and creators. But
absolutely.
I think in today's, context, in Ryanair's
Yeah.
context, they don't need to work with any creators. That's
Right.
my hot take.
Okay. That's a very interesting hot take, and I
Yeah.
tell you why I also thought of it, right? Because their branding, it's almost feels like a human, like you can imagine a persona already for Ryanair. So you'd imagine why people would want to, they don't need influencer marketing. They are their own influencers in that sense. Or people who are making memes are almost influencers for the brand.
Yeah.
But I think my logic was that perhaps after a certain point, even if right now, I think it's smooth set for them. After a point, it might be so that, they're not growing enough for people. They want to expand to a new geography. For example, famously, folks, Ryanair does not operate in the US. There are always been rumors and plans that they will. But if they were to introduce themselves to the US market, perhaps they could do an influencer marketing strategy. Or if people in the UK or Europe itself, they are getting tired with, the consistent unhingedness of Ryanair, perhaps an influencer would help where they could get introduced to Ryanair's offerings and whatnot. So that is what we discussed today. Very interesting creators as well, Shubham, that we have. Who do you actually want to discuss first?
Let's go with Luis.
Okay, amazing. We are for uh, fun, like Louis. We are on the page for fun for Louis. And I think it should be fun with Louis. Fun for Louis is the bit of a tongue twister. Fun for Louis.
I
Uh,
mean, we are here to, look at his content, which is fun for him. So,
yeah, it's fun for him. And clearly, I mean, he's been having a great time, Shubham. Like whatever we've seen of him, he seems to be having a great time. But let's actually get to the brass tacks. Let's actually get to the numbers. He's on an adventure, exploring a better way.
Yep.
Things, eco living, van life, adventure travel. But I think Ryanair does adventure travel because of their planes. It's not
Yeah.
luxurious idea to that adventure travel, right? But Shubham, your first thoughts on his performance, right? Very healthy subscribers,
Yep.
in terms of 1.99 million. But look at this, not very impressive when it comes to engagement rate or even
Yeah.
average comments.
I think this engagement rate is going down because of the number of, average comments per post, which is
Sure.
not much.
It's not much.
If you look at the views, it's fine. The number of likes is also fine. But, we have seen like the average comments are almost 10% of, the average likes.
Sure.
This is less than that, much
Yeah.
less than that. So it's roughly around 7%, I guess. So I think that's why we're seeing a dip in the engagement rate.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it looks fine.
Yeah. 0.0 of engagement rate. Clearly, work needs to be done there.
Yeah.
But of course, you look at the top content, and this is the persona that I was speaking about, right? The UK person. Imagine if this guy is there and he's, lives off a van. I mean, doesn't live off the van, but he has a Volkswagen bus that he travels in a lot when he does a podcast. And he's done quite a few interviews there, and he travels cheap, right? Like, let's not shy away from the fact that he travels in the most efficient way possible.
Yeah.
Right? And this is what something that Ryanair is also speaking about, that they're a low cost carrier, but it doesn't mean that they're not efficient, right? Their on time performance is great. You get a bunch of things with that. So I think that's the feeling that I get with Fun for Louis, that he will take the road not taken, or he will take the road that's taken, but he'll take the cheapest way out. So I think Ryanair that way has a great fit in terms of the content. But once we look at the comment analysis is where I think this really appeals to me, right? Where we don't have too many comments in the first place.
Yeah.
But the comments that we have, right? So he has a small, like the dedicated group, 93.62% are positive. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's a great number, of course, but when you look at the intent to buy, it's only
Yeah.
2.13%.
Sure.
So I would say that having overwhelmingly positive comments is bad in terms of intent to buy. because
Sure.
that means you're having a very generic audience,
Correct. Makes
right?
sense. No, makes sense for sure. I think uh, clearly there needs to be more intention to buy and more comments in general. I think that
Yeah,
volume, once you get that volume, then I think the numbers are also more true and more sort of, actually reflective of what your community, what your audience is uh, reflecting and what they want to speak about. So I think that is there. If you look at this one, which is again, folks, we've seen this across all the videos of influencer matchmaking, where the likes have this curve sometimes that they go up
yeah,
and down, average likes per post. But here we've seen that there has been a good increase, right? Again, not something too major, but from
yeah.
October we're looking at the past, let's say 5 months. Uh,
Still steady. Yeah,
yeah, it's been quite steady. It's not been falling. And in October, we are 1.98. We're very close to 2 million now, 1.99. So he's going to hit 2 million anytime now. Perhaps by the time this video comes out, he might have hit 2 million. But
yeah,
a steady rate that way. So that I think is great. Let's look at this then, right? Which is again something very interesting that I found. The first two audience locations, right? Which is US and the UK, an
yeah,
overwhelming majority, Shubham, because these are all the first four countries are all like they've had ties with the UK at some point. Because
yeah.
UK being UK itself, 28%, 19%, 4%, 3%. What are your thoughts around?
I mean, see, I'm gonna give my verdict at this point. It's a match between Ryanair and
Yeah,
Louis, because the audience location makes perfect sense. UK,
absolutely.
Canada, Australia, and these people have all heard, I'm sure, about Ryanair. They
Sure.
must have all flew in this great career as well, the
Yeah.
great low cost career.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm convinced that they can consider Louis as a creator to work with.
Absolutely. They definitely should, right? Because here you have, and why, I also want to focus on these two countries is because
Yeah,
United Kingdom is where Europe is where Ryanair is based out of. So again, a healthy 19% of your audience
almost
there.
50%. Yeah.
Right. And if you want to sort of, go ahead with the US, if you actually want to do that, so we have an audience for that. So clearly a very, and again, I love the fact that it's kind of, 50-50
Balance.
almost.
Yeah.
It's balanced where you have a healthy chunk of a female audience, viewers as well. You have 44% roughly as male viewers. So there you have a good balance of the UK and the US and female and male, right? And of course, when you're
Yeah.
traveling, I don't think there's any distinction that, okay, Ryanair is only for male or only for females. I think it's a very good balanced product. So if I'm a marketer at Ryanair, which is of course your dream job, Shubham, I would look at this and I'll be very happy, right? And I
Yeah.
will use Inside IQ folks that we keep using for all of our videos, and the link for Inside IQ is actually in the description down below. So you can actually have a spin. You can check it out and, look at your thoughts and look at your favorite creators. But for us, so far it's been great because yes, 50-50% split roughly, and quite a bit of sizable chunk from the US and the UK. Last bit, Shubham, that we have to cover for Louis, of course, is the demographics, right? And look
Yeah.
at this.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense again, because Ryanair provides you tickets in like 16 euros,
Yeah,
20 euros, 30 euros. And this, segment has no, like, let's say, less money in
yeah.
comparison to the
In
other.
comparison to the show.
So if you are thinking of a backpacking trip, why
I
not?
was just coming to that. I was
Yeah.
just coming to that, right? Because there's such a great piece, and I can almost see this influencer marketing campaign in front of me where Fun for Louis, of course, he's traveled across so extensively. If he used to tell, okay, this is how you can backpack across Europe, right? And this is going to be okay if you're flying from, let's say, Belgium to London, then you can, of course, do a bunch of travel through road, or you can actually take a Ryanair ticket. And of course, you
Yep.
can have the brand integration if this person watching is perhaps a female from the UK, right? And they are watching his video. They're 21 years old, just graduated college, and they want to do this trip, and they come across Fun for Louis. So I think that's a great perspective. That is a great bang on positioning. The backpacking trip. I think folks at Ryanair, if you're watching this, Fun for Louis, if you're watching this, I think it's a great match, and we've almost preempted and said that it's great fit. But Shivam, we also have another feature to
Yeah.
discuss. Right?
Let's
So
go.
let's also
Nadine.
sort of
Yeah.
talk about her. Nadine is her name, or Hey Nadine. Hey Nadine is what she goes by.
So Nadine is based out of Canada. Okay.
Yes, Nadine is based out of Canada, in the North American continent, but in Canada.
Yeah.
Uh, right. So Shubham, let's speak about Nadine here. Hey Nadine, subscribe for export travel advice and wanderlust adventures. Again, I love the fact that again, you know what I was speaking to you about in the pre-chat as well. Export travel advice. And from the very start, right? Like she's been like, okay, you know what? You watch my videos, you get some interesting travel advice, some interesting travel hacks. And that is very clear. Right from the get-go with Funfully, it's like, oh, you know what? I am a creator, I'm a traveler, I'm a vagabond. Right. But with Nadine, you're like, oh, you know what? I need some crazy travel hacks. I need some crazy travel tips. I will have to follow Nadine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And clearly people you have 510K subscribers. But look at this. This is Shubham. This has been one of the lowest we've actually seen so far when
Yeah.
it comes to
This
average
is
comments.
quite surprising. But before, I'll come to what you just said about tips and tricks,
Right.
regarding traveling. So I'll just quote something about Ryanair right now.
Okay.
It says, as with most things in life, you get what you pay for with Ryanair,
Yeah.
right? So the point is, the tips and tricks, they, heighten your expectations. Like
Sure.
I can get this, I can get that. But at the end of the day, you can get, that much for 20 euros, right?
Sure.
So these
Sure.
tips and tricks don't actually work out when you're
Sure.
flying with a low cost, carrier. So
Yeah.
Nadine, I mean, I'm I've seen her content. I think she's someone who takes, these tips and tricks, hacks very seriously.
Yeah.
I think conversely, it can be really good collaboration. Why? Because she can post something super serious. Ryanair would completely obliterate with a fun tweet.
Sure.
So it can be that kind of collaboration.
That kind of collaboration. No, for sure. Because I think the only fun trick or tip or hack that you can get with Ryanair is that it's cheap, right? So if you're like, oh,
Yep.
you're not traveling cheap,
That's it.
just go to Ryanair, right? There's no other, oh, first class, you can do this, you can have these many travel points, you can have this. You're like, you know what, you want cheap? Just go there. I think that can also be a nice little, a surprising piece of content that's there for Nadine. Of course, the top content, I would say, is not really something that's very forced to travel.
Yeah.
She does a bunch of things, and she's of course a traveling mother, which I think is really interesting. That she's doing
Really
all
cool.
of this and she's
Yeah.
managing all of this. But look at this, Shivang. This is where I'm kind of confused.
Stop. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Because you have an intent to buy, which is 10.53%.
Yeah.
One of the on the higher side, definitely, right? Of whoever we've covered on Friends of Matchmaking so far. But the audience sentiment, what do you think is happening there? It's a very mucky space.
Yeah. It's like neatly divided space.
Yeah.
People love her, hate her, and they are neutral to her at the
Neutral
same
towards
time.
her.
You know what? I've always said this. Like when people are neutral, right?
Yeah.
They are mostly negative.
Sure.
They don't really, make the effort of telling you they're positive. But it translates into, let's say, core audience, this
Sure.
positive audience, which may have, more intent to buy, which is why we are seeing this higher number. And
Sure.
again, I'm harking back to my previous point. I guess having, like a broad stroke, like 95% positive comments, I think it doesn't really translate into, intent to buy product. It talks more about your content, what kind
Sure.
of content you have, like generic content or what. So, I mean, even if let's say 2 people out of 19, as it mentioned here,
You know,
are buying, I mean, it's cool. Why not? It's just
why
that
not?
overall number of comments is less.
Overall comments is less. Again, this is something that all the creators we've seen today, definitely we can see that number of comments have been low, but clearly 10.53%, even those low comments we've seen, we've captured that sentiment. Perhaps as the comments grow, the percentage changes, but so far, it looks like Nadine can also be a great option to explore if you're doing a bang on collaboration and straight to the point where you're like, okay, you know what? I want to
Yep.
purchase this. And if you think about it, Shivam, this makes sense also, right? When it comes to intent to buy, is because Nadine gives such straight-jacketed opinions about tips and tricks. People are like, okay, you know what? I'm going to purchase that or I'm going to buy that because they know that, okay, it's a
Yeah.
hack. Nadine keeps on, spilling secrets about hacks. So automatically my intent to buy is very high because I'm like, yeah, I trust this person. I trust this person's voice.
Yeah, that's a good one, Shri. And I think that is because that is why we have so many negative, comments as well.
Sure.
Because some tricks may not work with,
Yeah.
everyone. If
Correct.
something we are trying together, let's say she's talking about 10 coupons that you can get here, and I'm the
Sure.
11th guy, I'm going to leave a negative comment.
Yeah.
I didn't get.
Correct. Absolutely. That's a great point. Such a nuanced, approach here where you have high, again, folks, this is something that we don't see too often in influencer matchmaking with creators where the intent to buy is high, but you also have a mix of positive and negative comments. But again, there is nuance to every creator journey, and I think every creator, like every brand, must embrace that, right? If you look at growth and interest, subscriber growth has been stable to the core.
Mm.
Like this is a straight line, a
Yeah,
horizontal straight line, which has not moved an
moving at
inch
all. Yeah,
since October. And again, we always have this little dip uh, or this little rise in likes growth. So that's also happened, right? So this is there. This is a fair. I would say this is not too much. Of course, right from the outset, a Fun for Louis has 2 million subscribers. Um, Nadine, on the other hand, has 510K. So it's clearly, I mean, Louis scores much better on that front. But
yeah.
again, there is a bit of stability here as well, which is great, which I think is great with her intent to buy as well. But let's look at this then, Shubham. Something that I was also
Very
focusing
similar,
on.
I would say.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah,
very similar. And what is the picture here, of course, is United States being at 34%,
yeah.
right? So that essentially means that
Bigger chunk.
biggest chunk, right? 1 hour every third person is who's watching one of the videos, of Hindradine is
Yeah,
based out of the US. They're most likely, again, I would say there's a good balance here as well of 59 and 42, if I have to round up these numbers. But it's a great balance. So I would say an ideal person would be in the US. If they're in there, like, if they're a female, then the US, they're staying there. Second, of course, is the UK, where we also have, Louis was,
yeah.
uh, UK was the second biggest market for him. Same with Nadeem. So I think that's where the similarities are. But US is a very big chunk of her audience at 34%. But let's finally look at her audience demographics, right?
Hmm.
And look at this number. 56% and 29%
Yeah,
for this age group. So again, similar age groups, right? You also have this 56% being a significant chunk, right? So if you're an 18 to 24, again, a college kid, perhaps studying in the US, right? Not studying in Europe, right? You also have India sort of sneaking in here. But in the US, if you're there, if you're a college kid, in the US, and if you want to do a tour to Europe, and if they, let's say, launch a transatlantic flight from London to US, from London to
yeah.
New York, then I think Kate Athena is a great choice. And I would perhaps take her over, Fun for Louis in this case. But of course, we have to look at, the current state as well, which is that Ryanair is exclusively in the regions of Europe, right? They don't operate too much, or their plans have been restricted because of the high costs. But if they were to, let's say, expand to the US, I think Nadine can also be a great choice.
Yeah, but I would say, Shri, like again, relating to my hot take that
Yeah.
Ryanair doesn't need to work with any creators.
Yeah,
The real question is, if they want to work with creators, what kind of collaboration they can do?
sure,
Because Ryanair is not a face. They don't have a face, right? They have a brand.
sure,
Because so far we have talked about companies that may not exactly be brands, popular brands, but Ryanair is a pop brand.
sure.
It has an image inside people's head, right?
Yeah,
So, and the positioning also matters, like in the low cost carrier. I think they should work with a creator who's also of that position, who's been mimified a lot.
yeah.
Let's say maybe Snoop Dogg,
Who?
all the stuff that he wears and all, sitting in a very cramped seat in
Yeah.
Ryanair and complaining, something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that, right? Because then you're also embracing the fact that the memification of your brand or your positioning goes beyond just your brand, but also the influencers that you work with, right?
Correct.
That I think is interesting, folks. This is what is the nuance, and this is what the level of thought that kind of goes into these marketing campaigns is who do you associate with, right? And it's not just about your principles and values, but also your positioning. And I think that is so important here, especially for a brand like Ryanair, because you immediately they have their pigeonholed an image, but who can be the best creator is also something that we'd like to hear from you in the comments, right? So if you've sort of watched this video and if you want to tell us who can be a great fit for Ryanair, or whether or not, like Shubham, you think that they don't need an influencer marketer at all, right? They don't need influencers. They can perhaps do a one-off celebrity post, or they can just be as they are. Let us
Yeah.
know in the comments below, folks. This has been great. We will get back to you for the next week with another episode of Influence Matchmaking. So make sure that you subscribe to our channel. More than 14,000 people have subscribed to Thousand Faces Club because they get their weekly dose of influencer marketing, about the creator economy, a bunch of news around that, and a lot more videos in store as well. So subscribe button is yours to hit down below. We will be back next week, of course, with another episode of Influencer Matchmaking. Till then, I'm Shriyan.
I'm Shubham.
All right, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.